Here's how I create my Joy Elegance beanie with the satin lining. On the wrong side of the cap, I am putting 4 pins in 4 quadrants just to mark the areas. And here's my satin lining. I've already cut it out and I've sewn up the side and stopped before the middle, sewn up the other side and stopped before the middle. I'm leaving this hole at the top and I'll show you exactly why I leave that hole here in a moment. So I'm going to take the satin lining and fold it in half just so that I can mark the quadrants. I am making 4 quadrants on each of the pieces on the satin lining and on the beanie just so that I can keep myself on track and keep everything lined up together. I'm just using a chalk marker and marking this on the wrong side so that you won't see it, but I'll see it and it'll keep me in line. So I'm lining the pieces up together. I'm lining the wrong side of the beanie with the right side of the satin lining. I'm tucking it in there because there's going to be a brim on this beanie, so I'm leaving enough space where the brim is going to fold. Using my straight pins, I'm just going to go in and pin it on each of the quadrants. So the first pin in the middle and the other pin on the middle of the back side, and then folding this in half the other direction so that I can also pin the other 4 quadrants, or the other 2 quadrants. So I'm folding this part in the middle over and pinning it. It's not going to be sewn this way. I'm just folding it and pinning it just to keep control. And you see how I put my hand under that opening? That's why we have the opening. I have the opening so that I can put it onto the arm of my machine. I'm putting this little envelope here just to cover up the ridges on the machine. As I slide this gently on the machine, I just want to make sure there's a smooth edge against the yarn. Once I have it nestled on there very carefully, I'm using my zigzag stitch so that I can stretch out the beanie itself so that it spans the length of the satin lining. The zigzag stitch will make it stretchy and make it very flexible. So taking the pins out as we go, making sure to stretch the beanie so that it lines up with the satin lining. All done. Now the beanie has a skirt on the wrong side. So I'm sticking my hand up the hole and pulling it on to the right side. And now the satin lining is nestled inside. And we see the zigzag stitches on the outside. So now this hole that we left so that we could fit it on the machine, now we're going to put it on a straight stitch so that we can carefully seam it closed. We're finished. Cutting off the excess. Now the beanie has her skirt on the inside, and we're just going to tuck it on in because now we are satin lined. How cool is that? Awesome. Now let's work on the infinity scarf. We're using this big twist and we're using this Craft Smart. Starting off the scarf with the waste yarn just to make it easier to seam the 2 ends together. Going around peg by peg, needle by needle, forward and back, in and out, however you want to say it, so that we can start with the waste yarn. And I typically do about 4 to 6 rows of waste yarn before adding the main color. We're adding hues of yellow in this infinity scarf that matches the beanie. And we're also adding a pop of cream onto this. Now that we're at the other end, we're adding the waist yarn so that we can bind it off. All done. So we did have some color changes on the inside, but as I went along, I was able to tie those off and cut off the excess strands. Having a double-walled infinity scarf helps when you have those loose ends because you don't have to weave them in because they're already on the inside. So cool. So just lining up my ends and stretching out the product so that all the stitches can just kind of fall into place before we sew it together. Giving you a close-up as I sew the infinity scarf together, starting on one side and alternating with the other side. The waist yarn helps you to easily see where the stitches are so that you're not seaming waist yarn. This is my favorite part, removing the waist yarn. It's so fun to be destructive and it have no effect on the finished look. Just pulling all the thread out, leaving a beautiful scarf behind. So much fun. Just binding up the ends. Before weaving them inside. All done. This coordinating Joy Elegance beanie that we made will now match this infinity scarf. How cool is that?